Welcome to Healthy Births, Happy Babies, where we share tips, tools, and stories grounded in natural childbirth and parenting principles, so that instead of feeling overwhelmed and confused during this exciting time in your life, you feel safe, supported, and empowered in your childbirth and parenting journey. And now, here's your host, Dr. Jay Warren.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Healthy Births, Happy Babies. I'm Dr. Jay Warren. I'm the Family Wellness Chiropractor and the Wellness Care Coordinator here at the CAP Wellness Center. And today we have Dr. Michel Odent with us. He is a world-renowned obstetrician. He has been pivotal in changing the way birth is being done in the hospital. It was back in the 1970s that he was the first to bring birthing pools and skin-to-skin contact into the maternity wards. He's written over 15 books on natural birthing methods, and today we're going to have an extended conversation with him. He has so much wealth, so much knowledge, and so much inspiration to share that our conversation was very extended, and so this is going to be a two-part interview. Today is part one. We're going to be starting off with one of his most quotable quotes, one of them that I love. It's, "To change the world, we must first change the way babies are being born." We start off with that, and he takes it from there. As I said, this is a two-part conversation. The second part will be coming out in our next episode. Before I switch over to that conversation, though, let me, as always, thank our sponsor, the CAP Wellness Center, who makes this podcast possible. The CAP Wellness Center in Encinitas, California, has assembled an incredible team of fully certified holistic healthcare professionals that offer the very best in prenatal, postpartum, and pediatric wellness services. We offer acupuncture, chiropractic, massage, yoga, lactation support services, and a wide variety of birth education classes to ensure that you are fully able to experience the power of birth. And now let me introduce to you Dr. Michel Odent. Dr. Michel Odent has been in charge of the surgical and obstetrical units at the Pithiviers State Hospital in France for over 20 years and is the founder of the Primal Health Research Centre in London. He introduced in the 1970s the concept of home-like birthing rooms and birthing pools in maternity hospitals. He's the author of the first article in the medical literature about the initiation of lactation during the hour following birth, and the first article about the use of birthing pools in hospitals. He created the Primal Health Research Database and is the author of 15 books published in 23 languages, including Childbirth and the Evolution of Homo sapiens, The Scientification of Love, Primal Health, Understanding the Critical Period Between Conception and the First Birthday, and Birth Reborn, What Childbirth Should Be. And now it's time to turn over to part one of our conversation. Now, the first time that we attempted this interview, there were technical difficulties on both ends, mine in San Diego and on his end in France, but I'm so thankful that we were able to reschedule. We did the interview the next day, and we were able to get all of his wisdom and inspiration onto the podcast here. So with no further ado, let me switch over to my conversation with Dr. Michel Odent. Hello again. How are you, Dr. Odent?
I can see you quite well, yes.
Good. Much better this time, right?
I think it's better than yesterday, yes.
Yes. So, I would love to, talk more about, the work that you're doing and really trying to transform birth in hospitals. And one of the quotes I came across that I just love of yours is, "To change the world, we must first start by changing the way babies are being born." And I think the work that you're doing is really trying to do that. Can you expand on that for us?
Yes, it's sure that when I wrote already long time ago, I think I wrote that the first time in 1970s, that if we want to change the world, we must first change the way babies are born. So it seems that until now, many people interested in the future of Homo sapiens, in the future of mankind, have not realized the importance of what's happening at birth. Until now, it has been like that. But suddenly, it's becoming different. Suddenly, particularly when you are among open-minded people, particularly those with a scientific background, it's easier and easier to explain the importance of what's happening at birth. First, it's easy to explain that this is the phase of human life that has been the most dramatically modified during the past decade. Easy to explain. You can give some details. You can say to give birth, a woman is supposed to release a cocktail of hormones of love. Mammals release hormones of love when they give birth. But today, at a time when the births are more and more difficult, when women use drips of synthetic oxytocin, what you call in America pitocin, to replace the natural hormone, at a time when we can rescue babies with a safe cesarean section, today suddenly we have to realize that most women give birth to the baby and to the placenta without releasing love hormones. It's absolutely new, and that's easy to explain. In the same way, it's easy to explain that today, immediately after birth, the immune system of newborn babies is not educated anymore, is not programmed anymore, thanks to the effect of familiar microbes. Ideally, a newborn baby, the body of a newborn baby needs to be colonized by a great diversity of familiar microbes. And we must say that a century ago, most babies were immediately colonized by many kinds of familiar microbes. We were born at home. Today, suddenly, is different. And that's a big issue, particularly because we spoke about human beings, and there is something special about human beings, that baby is born with the same antibodies as the mother. The human baby needs familiar microbes. That's a way to educate its immune system. Great diversity of familiar microbes. So from this perspective, there has been a turning point in the history of childbirth. So these are different ways when you talk with open-minded people, particularly if they have a scientific background, to start by saying the period of birth is probably the phase of human life that has been the most dramatically modified during the past decades. Okay. And having said that, it's easy to add that according to several emerging, fast-developing scientific disciplines, the period of birth is critical in the formation of individuals. In other words, it's a short period of time with many deep, long-term effects. That was easy to explain. So you mentioned what we learned from modern bacteriology, what we learned from what is called epigenetics. That means what we learn about how genes are educated to express or not to express themselves. All these new emerging disciplines tell us the period of birth has long-term consequences, even probably transgenerational consequences. So incredibly easy to explain that. So it's a modern way to go back to what I wrote in the 1970s, and that's been often mentioned, that if you want to change the world, and if you want, we must first reconsider how babies are born. We have to start from that. And that's not well understood until recently, particularly in scientific milieus. Many scientific people have not realized that point, but suddenly it's easy to explain this important point.
And one of the groups I'm working with, the Association of Prenatal and Perinatal Psychology and Health, APA, is studying just that. Bringing the scientific articles around how epigenetics and the psychology of babies is really being shaped by the prenatal experience as well as the perinatal experience. And it's really an important conversation, I think, for mothers to hear so that they can make different choices during their pregnancy.
Yes, this concept of prenatal psychology was born in July 1982 in Toronto with the Cité where is Tom Verney. I was at the first conference of perinatal psychology. Of course, it's one aspect of the question. Psychology, mostly behavior, subjective feelings. But we have to, after that, they enlarge the topic. Originally, they were say association of prenatal psychology. After that, they had to add health. We have to enlarge. No, psychology is restricted because we have to consider the immune system, we have to consider the way everything is organized in our body, So psychology was a little bit restrictive. Having said that, I must say that the people who created this association, in fact, originally Tom Verney and David Chamberlain, were pioneers in focusing on the importance of fetal life. There were other ways to think already of the importance of what's happening during fetal life, particularly when considering how some basic sensory functions develop. Some sensory functions are very primitive. Particularly, one of them is the sense of hearing. And I was interested in this issue starting in 1970s. We know that the sense of hearing starts to be educated during fetal life. The ear develops quite early during fetal life, internal ear, external ear. And at that time, I was raising questions. I was about our society. I was recalling to some people at that time that it seemed that in all societies, pregnant women, in general, were happy to sing to their baby. And lullabies are as well as mankind. And when a pregnant woman is singing, it means that for the baby in the womb, it's a very rich stimulation by sounds which are, you cover many frequencies. So perhaps babies need to be exposed to the singing voice of the mother, a rich stimulation, developing this sensory organ. This is how in our maternity hospital, in our maternity unit in a French hospital in the 70s, we used to invite pregnant women on Tuesday night to sing together. Singing together, probably a way to have an effect on the development of the sense of hearing of the newborn baby. We are meeting on the piano, singing together. The interesting point is that how happy pregnant women were to sing. I heard many women saying, in general, in my daily life, I don't sing, except when I'm expecting a baby. I feel this need. So just to say that already at that time, in our own way, in our own place, in the maternity unit in a French hospital, we are raising this question. What happened? The importance of fetal life. When many physiological functions start to be programmed, to be educated, to developed, and in particular, probably the sense of hearing. Also, we have to think of the other part of the ear, the internal part of the ear, what we call the vestibular system, thanks to which we know about the position of our body, we have a balance, It's a very primitive sensory functions. The internal ear is the only organ of the human body that is reaching its adult size during fetal life. It's very primitive. So we are also thinking of importance of pregnant women moving, dancing, things like that. The possible side effect of some medical practices, for example, advise pregnant women to have a rest in bed. There was no reason, no evidence about the advantages of staying in bed to prevent of prematurity, but it was common practice. So I inspired some articles about that. So it was a way to think of what's happening during fetal life. One aspect of the question, development of basic sensory functions.
Sorry, yes. I'd read some studies around how they've women reading certain books or singing certain songs prenatally, then after the baby was born, they had indicators that the baby recognized it and certain memories were formed.
Yeah, there are stories like that. I have some anecdotes personally of stories where apparently the newborn baby could recognize songs that the mother has been singing when she was pregnant. There are stories also of children who could recognize, identify a language. Women who were speaking their own language when they were pregnant, and after that another language, things like that, So these anecdotes, you have to be careful with the anecdotes, yes. To be careful. But what is sure is that for whatever the aspect of the formation of the human body you consider, what happened during fetal life is important. Our basic adaptive system, the immune system, the hormonal system, the nervous system, these are critical phases of development. So, important phase of development, and the period of birth itself, until recently, has been underestimated as a critical period for the development of human beings. And is the phase of human life that has been most dramatically modified. In a sense, fetal life has not been so much modified during the past decades compared with the period of birth. The period of birth is absolutely, completely new. Babies are deprived of microbes. Babies can be completely deprived of stress. We need stress. Think of a baby born by pre-labor cesarean section. Cesarean section before the labor start. This baby has not been exposed at all to maternal and fetal stress hormones that are so important for the development of many physiological functions. It's absolutely new, absolutely new. There is no phase of human life that has been more dramatically modified than the period of birth. With extreme cases pre-labor C-section, cesarean section, pre-labor, no stress hormone. And it has been demonstrated that the effect of this stress deprivation, for example, we can go back to sensory functions, effect on the development of the sense of smell. It seems that the period of birth is critical for the development of the sense of smell, smelling. I can tell you about a study in Sweden. They expose newborn babies immediately after birth to specific odors. Some days later, babies could obviously recognize these odors, except those born by pre-labor cesarean section. And because a part of the study was to evaluate the concentration of the fetal stress hormone called noradrenaline in the blood of the baby, they could say that the reason for that, it was stress deprivation. babies have been deprived of stress when giving birth. To develop properly the sense of smell, need to be exposed to stress hormone during the critical period of birth. So just focusing on sensory functions, we are learning a lot about this short period of time at the beginning of human life. But it's not just sensory function, it's an immune system, it's endocrine system, it's something I have developed in a book published in 1986, a book which was called Primal, Primal, Primal Health, and the concept of primal period. Primal period means from conception until the first birthday, including birth and so on. This is a period of human life when our basic adaptive systems are reaching a certain degree of maturity. So at that time, I said, we must realize that probably our health is to a great extent shaped during this primal period. At that time, we had no way to confirm what was purely theoretical, no epidemiological studies. Today is different. At that time, in 1986, that was about 30 years ago, I started to collect all studies exploring correlations between what happened during the primal period and what happened later on. It's in a database called that you can explore on the web, primalhealthresearch.com in one word. And when I started this database in 1980s, I could not find more than half a dozen of such studies, epidemiological studies, correlations. Today, we are close to 1,000. So it's a new generation of studies. These are ways to confirm that what happens at the beginning of our life has long-term consequences. Today, we must say even transgenerational effect. When we think long-term today, we have to think of transgenerational effect. Though that's something new, to realize the importance of this short critical period of time. The concept of critical period is important. It means short period of time, very short, but many long-term consequences. So, for example, for some particular diseases, the critical period for the interaction between gene and environment can be middle of fetal life, middle of life in the womb. For other diseases, it can be the birth. For other diseases, it can be just after. What's important today, when we consider the origin of diseases that are not purely genetic, what is important is to identify the critical period for gene-environment interaction. When was the interaction? And this is one of the roles of our database, to bring together studies that are everywhere in the medical literature, in the specialized medical literature, to bring them together and to have some ideas of what this critical period are for this disease or that disease and so on.
Right. And in that time, say a 30-year period of time, it went from just a few studies to over 1,000. There's a lot of research being done for it.
Now it's now more and more such epidemiological studies. Mm-hmm. I must repeat that these studies are epidemiological. It means that researchers look at correlations. They say there is a correlation between, for example, being born with a drip of synthetic oxytocin. There is a correlation with the risk of becoming autistic. They only provide correlations. It's not their business to talk about cause and effect. It's not their business to interpret. So, but we have to start from these correlations. After that, we have at our disposal emerging, fast-developing scientific disciplines that can provide interpretations. And today, it's easier and easier to suggest interpretation. Disciplines like epigenetics, how genes are trained to express themselves or not to express themselves. Modern bacteriology can often help to interpret what's happening at birth from a bacteriological perspective, has long-term effects. So today, suddenly, it's becoming much easier to explain to anybody the importance of what's happening at the beginning of our life, and in particular at birth. Because in general, people pay attention to what we learn about the importance of fetal life in the womb. People are interested in possible effect of breastfeeding, vaccination, so on. But the period of birth, in general, people don't want to look at that. They don't want. I have developed this fact in a short paper in the medical journal Lancet. I have identified what I call cul-de-sac epidemiology. Cul-de-sac. You understand cul-de-sac?
Yes, cul-de-sac epidemiology.
Cul-de-sac. Yes. Cul-de-sac is a French term, understood in English, so it's convenient. It's talk about what we know about long-term consequences of what happens at birth. We have data at our disposal. We don't want to look at them. We prefer to look at something else. That's what I call cul-de-sac epidemiology. But we have many data at our disposal, but we have to accept to look at them. I can give you an example of what is cul-de-sac epidemiology. I'm sure that you heard, probably, like everybody in the world, that theories according to which some kinds of infant vaccinations might be risk factors for autism.
Yes.
Everybody heard about that.
Mm-hmm.
Look at our database. There have been many huge, valuable epidemiological studies. Epidemiologists could never find any correlation between any kind of infant vaccination and the risk of autism. But, on the other hand, there are at least 15 valuable studies with huge numbers, scientifically very good studies, that confirm that the period of birth is critical for the interaction between gene and environment in the case of autism. Particularly, all studies looking at the effect of labor induction or labor augmentation found that it was a risk factor. And that confirmed by many studies in many countries, the kind of protocols. People don't want to look at that. The media didn't want to look at that. People don't want to look at that. They prefer to look at the effect of vaccination purely theoretical. And I call that to put the cart before the horses.
Yes.
It means establishing theories before having the data available. You start with theories. So we have to be careful with theories. We must always, the point of departure should always be epidemiological studies. Studies exploring possible correlations between what happened at that time and what happened later on and so on. We have to start from that. And the other emerging, fast-developing scientific disciplines are useful to suggest interpretation. But we have to start from hard data. So that's the role, the objective of our database, to provide this hard data. After that, others will interpret. That theory is easy to make theories,
right.
But you need to start from the hard data.
Yes. All right, that wraps up part one of my interview with Dr. Michel Odent. Be sure to join us for the next episode, where in part two, we're going to be talking about the scientification of love. We're talking about the hormone cascade that initiates labor and is so important for mama and baby bonding. And then also, he's going to share with us what the one thing he thinks every mom should do during her pregnancy that is the most important thing he's learned after over 50 years in helping women deliver babies. So please join us next time, and thank you for listening today.
Thank you for joining us today. For more information about this episode and other natural childbirth and parenting topics, please visit us at capwellnesscenter.com or message us on our Facebook page with any questions you might have. We here at the Cap Wellness Center look forward to helping you and your family be as happy and healthy as you can be.